Hey everyone, thank you all for coming. My name is Sebastian Sanchez. I'm the manager of digital art sales at Christie's. I'm super excited to be here today with two powerhouses in the digital art space. Two people I admire and deeply respect and have worked with on many occasions and for many years. So super excited to be here with both of these guys. They basically need very little introduction, but we have Jack Butcher, digital artist, graphic designer and entrepreneur, and AC, the collector, who is a generative art collector and I guess just overall art collector, founder and partner at 6529 Capital. So let's get right into it. I know we were in a bear market all year, but I think these two guys really led the space forward in many different occasions and really proved that there's still movement happening amidst all the negativity and all the sort of FUD in the space. So again, really excited. Thank you both for joining me. I'd love to start off on January 3rd, 2023, Checks. A 24-hour open edition for $8. I think it was around the time of Instagram and Twitter both becoming like paid for verification, if I'm not wrong. And a total of 16,031 were minted. Took the NFT world by storm and really started this crazy open edition craze that lasted for like, I don't know how many months, for better or for worse. But I would say you were a huge catalyst for that. So would love to just hear more about like, you know, briefly like your journey, like getting up to Checks, why you made Checks, just a little bit about like the background of it.
Sure. So January 3rd is when the first image went live, which was in response to the Elon verification, Meta. The real prompt for it was when you hovered over the blue check mark after those changes were implemented, the platform put this box up that said, this is a legacy verified account. It may or may not be notable. So the entire commentary started from there. That was like the caption came before the image. And the caption was, this artwork may or may not be notable. And the first iteration of it parodied a dot painting, switched out everything with checks. And this idea of the paradigm switch from top-down verification, conference room full of people deciding that you are or are not notable, to this decentralized network deciding based on legitimate economic energy. One of the things that I was so surprised about was there were a factor of 16 more checks minted than there were likes on the post on Twitter.
That's funny.
Which is like a fascinating thing to think about. They're both networks. They're both sending these signals of approval for varying different reasons. And yeah, those 16,000 signals of approval were the prompt to continue to develop the story and build what is now a more sophisticated thing.
Yeah. AC, what were your thoughts when you first saw Checks?
I thought it was funny because we had invested in Blur, and I was familiar with the trading volume on Blur. Was always an obsession of mine just in the beginning, because we were getting rightfully flayed for not knowing what Blur would do maybe to the ecosystem. But in the beginning, I was just like, okay, who is this Jack Butcher guy? Because this guy is driving volume. And so my first reaction was, he certainly captured the attention, which I think 12 months later, let's call it, still definitely the case with Jack. The ability to, I think in the beginning I was like, this is well engineered to capture Blur volume, actually. Like, this is something that they're quite fungible. They're volumes of, the checks in the beginning, I think quantity wise, it was the image of what, like 16 checks?
A grid of 8 by 10, so it's 80, yeah.
Oh, 80, 8 by 10. So, you're curious of what's going to happen with all 16,000 of these things that got minted, and how's this volume going to, like, my first reaction was caution and like, wow, this thing came out so hot. How's it going to turn out? And I start reading into it, and I had known Jack since Visualize Value. And I'm like, okay, as cute as these checks are, there's going to be something more ontological here. Like, Jack's working something up. But you're right. it sparked the open edition craze for the second time, I think, in our ecosystem. And so where some people are like, great, I'm going to, you kind of, I had this comfort, okay, there's a plan here. And I think since then, you've only seen the Story Jacks building increase into this like universe of, different drops. So I started with caution, because I had to judge for the fund, what were we going to participate with? And again, when you hear something was minted for $8, your first reaction when you see it at 80 and no less, like, 1 ETH once it ran up to like that level, you're like, there's no way I could touch that. But, I think the way that you instituted the burn mechanics, and like we're now, I think one of 12, we have a 1 of 12 check as well. And so, we've committed ourselves to collecting the Jack story as he's been able to maintain this attention. It's been pretty
Jack,
incredible.
Did you anticipate like all of this, basically?
No, of course not. No, I had no idea really. I actually, we had a second baby 4 days before this happened. Ooh. So there was absolutely no plan to do this, but just the attention necessitated further action. Yeah. So shout out to Celia, my wife.
You also came out in January with Oppen, which is a whole other sort of ecosystem. Can you just talk about a little bit about the inspiration launching that?
Yeah, so there was one very specific visual inspiration, which was a guy called Bats, who's been doing these geometric Pepes, and obviously hat tip to Matt Fury, who created the first iteration. And this idea of digital identity and attention was front and center in my mind as the checks, the ability for checks to reappear on the timeline. Initially, we had this remix culture around the project because of the degree of specificity in the visual. So anybody felt like they could remix it, where people doing it by hand, they're switching out the symbol, they're taking the check and turning it into a pixel and building tools to make images of check. So it just resonated at some like meta level where so many people participated. But the PFP as a piece of digital real estate is, I use the analogy like the beachfront property. This is the like Star Island of digital real estate, where if you're trying to get attention on the work you're doing as a digital artist, if you can get something into that circle alongside the messages that are talking about what you're doing, that's like the holy grail. But as an artist, it's also a very, very difficult format, as many people have discussed. Like, not everybody wants to jump into the PFP meta for many, many reasons. As so many poor examples of execution there. So it started as this free mint, 16,000, and no, it was 15,087 tokens were minted in an hour this time. So this was after check. So we had it
insane.
Open edition, 1 per wallet, free, got up to almost 16,000 pieces. And they were just sitting there for months and months while we were building check stuff. And all of the things that we were sort of discovering in checks as we were developing those mechanisms, this like empty canvas in a way, the network that Oppen had created was just sitting there buzzing every day. And then just kind of applied a lot of the ideas and the challenges that I'd had with working in the PFP format to just try and engineer some constraints that would alleviate those challenges. So the idea of not doing 16,000 slight iterations of one thing, you can't imagine that community sustains in that way beyond the people that have already executed in a phenomenal way, like punks and apes of the world that have these like massive, massive power laws applied to them. So we built this system we assigned rarity post. So these things became blanks with different degrees of rarity. They inherited these different tiers of additions, also playing with this idea of does the uniqueness of the thing visually make it more valuable, or is it about the provenance of who participates, what it looks like, why are people judging these things? We built a front end with all these different consensus mechanisms, and in hindsight realized a lot of things about that made it a little bit more anti-fragile. Maybe is like 80 people at a time coming in to form these like little groups of communities around different artists. I should talk a little bit about how it works. Is it up there? Yeah. So this silhouette can basically, it's so simple that it can absorb all these different aesthetics, all these different treatments. Any artist can do a iteration of this thing. There's 4-year-olds doing versions of this and posting it to Twitter. And one thing I experienced when I was building Visualize Value and trying to help people who had like a creative ability try and scale what they're doing on the internet, everyone runs into this cold start problem where you're just screaming into the void of like, I don't have a network effect. I can't get eyes on what I'm doing, even if it is phenomenal. And I'd kind of built that through 3 years of doing the exact same thing on Instagram, painfully so, like never stray from this aesthetic constraint. And the people who align with it, are interested in it, blah, 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 will become part of this network. So I tried with Visualize Value to do that, have guest artists and stuff, but then deviating from that stuff didn't really work in the same way as having like a format that can absorb all of this stuff, and an identity is so much more fluid than like trying to communicate a very specific idea in a diagram. And we're 27 sets into the releases so far.
So Checks is like a play with the blockchain. It was like burn, combine, and then, refine, I guess, like into, the one check was the goal. And Opepen was a sort of a blank canvas. As you said, there's 27 artists or, people who have contributed. Did you, like, coming out with Checks and Opepen, was that the original intention, or did you iterate over time?
Checks definitely was that, was informed by the idea there, right, where like status is for sale, and in an interesting sort of turn of events, I guess, these things get less visually unique as you compile them. So the 80 check that you take from the addition to the on-chain original, which is the first part of the process, is you as a collector participating in influencing the outcome of the piece. And then as you continue to combine these things together, they end up a single check on a piece of a black screen. And there's commentary there in, you'd rather collect the thing that signifies you've put more into the process, in it for the art as a function in the contract that we have. That's, you look at it from a purely rational standpoint as a collector, you are reducing your optionality exponentially by doing that. Like, you're creating this thing that is personal to you, and those things have stayed with the people that made them since.
Was it your original intention, like the way it's progressed? Like, did you iterate once it was released, or like when you released Checks, were you like, I'm going to make this become like this sort of blockchain experiment?
No, we basically built the process in public. So as we're figuring out the way in which this open edition was going to become this mechanical thing, every decision was being documented. We're thinking about doing this. This is how the front end's going to look. Here's all the variations that we're thinking about. And then Checks is done. It's finished. It's like the contracts are deployed there forever. We can't change. We don't have custody of the contracts anymore. So that's like, shout out to Jalil, who wrote all those contracts. Incredible. And Traf did a lot of work on the front end. And that is a completely different, almost yin and yang to Opepen, which is what can you do with a token if you have this ever-present connection with a collector. And that does exist in the Checks metadata too. Like early on, we were changing the metadata to represent these moments in time, right?
Yeah,
where
the Alien Punk
got sold. We took that, put it on the grid and put it out. So you're continually getting attention back on what you're doing. And then Opepen is designed very differently mechanically, but it has the attention mechanics built into it where there's 200 separate drops, and we have a submission engine for artists that want to participate in it, and there's probably like 1,000 submissions in the back end right now. Like it's incredible to see this stuff, and just trying to push the silhouette as far as we can. And as we're going, one of the other original ideas I had for this was called Opepen AI. That was the first iteration of it, because of image generation being commoditized like crazy, right? Like if you're an artist, many long controversial conversations you can have about this. Your work is being scraped and reimagined and put into this. So we ran a load of experiments early on where we just gave an AI the outline, and then it could do you an Opepen in the style of any artist that's ever posted work on the internet, which is a crazy thing that we wanted to build a collection to capture the evolution of image making and how fast it was going. So I imagine like if the first set is Stable Diffusion 2.1, by the end, maybe these things are, holograms or something. I don't know. They're, like the evolution is so crazy. And obviously the culture of digital art changes and artists come and break out and make aesthetics their own and trying to capture some of those moments in the collection. It's going to take us a long time to finish it, but the constraint that drove Visualize Value to be this robust network is built into this, but the output is completely different aesthetically.
Amazing, yeah. Still following Opepen and excited to see the rest of the sets. AC, in February we worked together to sell Fidenza 724. That was an amazing moment for the community. It was the first time Tyler Hobbs was brought to the evening sale. It was the first time like code-based generative art from Art Blocks was in an evening sale. And for those who may not know, evening sales, one of the largest global platforms for selling art. It was live streamed all over the world.
It's like the Super Bowl of art every quarter. It is, if anyone lives in New York or in London, you go to the evening sale or you just go before the, and just look. Sorry to cut you off here, but
please go ahead.
Let me shield Christie's here. It is like, you would be so impressed with the effort and the elegance of how the art is displayed. And someone told me, as I was there in London for the evening sale, they're like, I come to everyone because most of these you never see again. Most of the works that do sell once. They sit in a foundation or in a family collection for longer than a human lifespan, let's call it. So anyhow, to cut you off there.
No, all good. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for working with us, of course. And also, like you and I worked together in 2019. You bought one of Tyler Hobbs' early work for what, like $1,000 or less?
$500. And I got it for Mother's Day, on my wife's first Mother's Day. It was like Sebastian and Sophia came in clutch because I wanted something that was reflective of motherhood, and it's this symbiotic mother and child looking piece where they're hugging, and then there's this flow field around them, pen plotted work from Tyler. And anyhow, that kickstarted my generative art bug because I bought it without knowing it was generative, which is like 0% the case today. Everyone knows when they're buying generative art, it has a unique aesthetic, but Tyler had this way of making it so human and beautiful that today I still look for work like that because that's, you're collecting the emergence from these algorithms. But yeah.
So yeah, like, I mean, 4 years, like you bought that for what, $500 in 2019. 4 years later, you have a Fidenza and you're selling it on the global scale for £365,000. What did that feel like? Like, because you were in the room, you were there. I mean, that's like, for me, that was one of the first things I worked at when I joined Christie. So it was a huge full circle moment for me. Curious how you feel as well.
Yeah. Fidenzas are hard to sell because you're going to love it when it's no longer yours. It happened to me several times where I had sold like 3 Arrows Capital Fidenza that then ended up in a liquidation auction, sadly. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, whoever gets that is a real winner, and I'm a loser now. But I haven't really looked at it since I sold it. So, look, I think what's cool about generative art on chain, we'll call it, is I minted that, right? So in the provenance of that Fidenza is the fact that AC minted it. And so I feel a part of it still. I'm okay. The person who ended up collecting it is a kingmaker in traditional art. So it's good to share these things and to import, more collectors from that side of the world. But I'll give you a few comments, right? So first I was just floating when I was in London for the sale. Felt like I didn't belong for sure. Like I didn't grow up thinking I would have a piece in the evening sale. Didn't know that it was something cool to even have. Now that I have it, it's the only thing I tell people when I intro, jokingly. But secondly, here's a story. I'm videoing this very proud when the hammer hits, or like I'm trying to capture this moment myself at Christie's. And something about the Brits, as everyone here could probably attest to, is they're very polished. They're very like they knew culture first. I love the Brits, but they really want you to feel that. And so there was this older gentleman behind when they announced Tyler Hobbs. There was an older gentleman behind me who was an SOB and was like, within earshot of my video, was like, "Oh yes, Tyler Hobbs, who?" Like jokingly. And I was like, "Oh, this motherfucker, this guy, it ruined my video, but I'll talk to him after." So the hammer hits, we beat the estimate, and the market has been already going pretty soft, and some of these estimates were hard to hit. So I felt really good. I turn around and I tell this guy, that was my piece that sold, and I'm not gonna go buy a Warhol. Nothing against Warhol, but I really wanted to show this guy, this is the first time. Like, get used to this. And with my liquidity, I'm not gonna play your game, right? Well, I am gonna buy traditional art. I'm not like anti-traditional art, but for the most part, I would hate, like, I am never gonna sell a Fidenza or something again and buy something unnetworked, which is the word that I would use. There's such an intrinsic value. Like Jack, for example, he is a network artist, right? That is his canvas, is this network. He has, in the middle of the bear market, Jack was selling out. Open editions selling in the tens of thousands. And so when I left Christie's that day, I was definitely happy. And then I'm like, I still thinking of this a-hole behind me. I'm like, trying to just solidify my thesis now that I have some liquidity again. And I'm like, okay, how could I maybe reinforce, or I didn't want to double down on my bias and be like, wow, a payoff. I'm right. Let me go and buy it. Like, I didn't buy another Fidenza or anything like that. But I did want to have kind of this post liquidity event clarity where, as I'm saying, like networked art, things that are just inherently on a marketplace as they're born. Like the fact that an NFT is a token and that token could agnostically be listed in an instant anywhere. Like that does not happen with Canvas. And so I felt really good because I took the hard route was going through Christie's. Never a hard thing. Auction houses know how to place works, but this is their evening sale, and none of the people that buy in the evening sale really know what a Fidenza or Tyler Hobbs even is, or code-based art. And so we still found success the hard way, we'll say, right? It wasn't an OpenSea listing.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I've since left that event, like more work to do. But let me cap it with, please go to an evening sale if you guys are ever in a city that it's happening. Just go get lost and be proud that we will consistently probably always just have like an NFT in at least one, they're quarterly, but at least one evening. I'm not going to speak for Christie's, but there's no way it's going to stop. And it's hard, speaking lastly on liquidity, I don't speak for the generation, but I was at Art Basel yesterday getting a tour, and the dealer who was giving the tour was saying how there's just always demand for some of the great artists. As soon as they have something on the primary, there's a wait list, and then you better be a good person because they're going to filter you if you're bad. Well, that's a racket, and it's a good racket because it keeps the art world turning nice and pretty. We don't have that in crypto, in blockchain. Like we do have wrapped Ethereum bids on our assets as they're sitting. If you have a good asset, there's likely an offer on it. But we don't have like this primary marketplace where there's always demand for a great artist. in the 7 and 8 figures. We haven't made that market yet. And so when I left Christie's, I noticed how, yeah, it does exist. There is this constant demand button on the old masters, and we have to do that still. It's not, it doesn't come quickly. So we, I think I left last part of that event for me was like work to do, because I think if you're gonna have more Fidenzas in the future, like you got to build that demand up, and it's likely it's going to continue happening where the crypto wealthy are able to reinvest profits. You're not going to make money in crypto and go buy a Warhol. Let's keep bagging Warhol. You're going to make money in crypto and you're going to buy something on the network. That's just like, find me the anomaly, and I'll argue he's the anomaly. And so the part that I'm interested in working on is, yeah, that's great. Crypto, when the number goes up and everyone has more net worth because of their coins, that's inspiring. Awesome. That's exactly what I believe in. I believe in the network. But we're also trying to onboard this, traditional minded collector. Like, that liquidity is important for me. That's how we use Christie's to really attract, like these guys have like Ken Griffin, permanent capital guys. That's, I think, the work that needs to be done, the respect that we need to earn started with that evening, in my opinion.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Also want to touch upon, in 2022, you acquired Living Architecture Casa Batlló by Rafik Anadol. And this year in May, you went to Barcelona, and I think it was May, right?
Yeah.
You went to Barcelona and saw the live projection mapping. What was that like? I mean, that's pretty amazing. It's like the city, like it's, it's art, it's like public art. It's, the city of Barcelona is there, like Rafik's there. Like, what does that feel like?
I get goosebumps. My wife's here. She probably has goosebumps too, because let's talk about, like, let's make fun of traditional art for a second. If Picasso had put Guernica in front of Casa Batlló, you would not have had the success that Rafik Anadol and our piece had. It doesn't scale, right? This canvas, this frame of Guernica or any of his greats, they're beautiful, not to make fun of it, but you could not achieve, like, think of your favorite sporting game that you ever went to, or think of that concert where you just had hair in the back of your neck standing up. This event, there were 65,000 Catalans standing in front of like, Gaudí is the culture that they have exported around the world from Barcelona. He is uniquely theirs. And Rafik just made this incredible artwork, and we own it because we bought it through the evening sale that May.
Yep.
But it was incredible to give it back to the people of Barcelona in this 5-minute video. There were 65,000 people there for 4 straight hours. We had a showing every 30 minutes. And so you're never going to get that with the Mona Lisa. I don't care that it's more valuable or more important or more. As we continue, what we are able to do is scale alongside the transistor in a way that canvas is just dead. And we get, oftentimes, like, there's a viral photo going around Twitter where there's an exhibition somewhere else in Miami that's a joke. There's wires on the wall, and it looks like an American Airlines lounge where no one cared to put away any of the food that was out. Like, it looks just messy. And that sets us back a ton because, when someone looks at a screen, their reaction is going to be, this is a TV. And you have to show them it's not. There are things that are like that this Tezos event failed on, but otherwise, you have to beat that out of someone. This is better than a screen. This is just the gateway for you to see the actual content the artist wants you to see. So the fact that Rafik put Batlló on like 7-story building, a UNESCO heritage building, right? And gave it back, that is like, I'll remember that like going to a ball game with my dad,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I mean, and so the last thing, my wife and I were like, we were watching the people around us, like mothers hugging their boys, and you're just seeing this pride and this like everyone's crying. So I left there like, there's fuck it, nigga.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. That the future is the fact that people could experience this at scale. We want to have those stadium experiences. We want to go to you want that fourth quarter touchdown where you're throwing your beer. Like you just want to have that shared moment with others. And so, you'll see the Rafik upstairs, which is beautiful as well. Imagine that ability to capture. I think that's, attention on the physical scale. It's not as easy to do on the digital scale, but, Rafik is one that nailed it.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you. Like, so good. I think next in May as well, Jack, we worked together on Checks Elements, which was a series of 152 spin on the checks. I think it was a generative artwork where there were some alpha checks, earth, wind, water, and fire. And Christie's auctioned off water, earth, and wind, or air. Is it air? Air, right? Air.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And they were with prints with the legendary printmaker Jean Millant. Tell me a little bit more about like physical, digital, your experience of working with this very legendary printmaker who's done prints with some of the most amazing artists, Ed Ruscha.
Incredible.
Tell me about that.
Actually, you know what? I was gonna offer a paradoxical perspective on the Tezos poll first, which will set this up. Which is
we can go there. It's
which
okay.
is
Yeah,
like
go for it.
The ironic thing about that, let's say, is it created an event on the network that produced all of this artistic participation that drives this like moment of provenance back to the shitty hanging wires on the pole, wherever that thing was, right? So that thing is like now way more iconic than maybe even a more polished version of a digital art gallery. And in my mind, in trying to do this week, trying to put digital art on the walls, you're like, it's very hard to do it well. It's incredibly hard to do it well. And to limit yourself as an artist to thinking that your art has to be in the frame, that you can take what your art is about and put it in a physical space in a different way. Not knocking putting the work in frames and showing it, but there are things to be done there. But sorry for the diversion.
It's all good. Props to NFT now for the display.
The elements thing
Really
now is kind of the inverse of that happening, where you have this network event, you have this community, you have this activity happening on the internet, and then have the opportunity to work with someone as legendary as Jean to make a print, that the concepts that you're trying to marry those two things together was this idea of consensus in the physical world. So consensus on a chain is 200,000 nodes, all validating transactions and checking the ledger every 13 seconds. But in the physical world, consensus that predates technology as we think about it is the elements of the world. So any culture, any country, any language arrived at these categorizations for matter and elements. And the process for creating these was a digital algorithm that output the instructions, and then the physical production of the prints was just as algorithmic, right? Because these were done as monoprints. So every single check you paint individually, run the press, paint another one, run the press, clean the press, get the other, and we have this, set of instructions that are algorithmically generated, but represent this decentralized consensus that was been occurring for as long as human beings can make marks. And the check is obviously, a new symbol that represents consensus.
Can't talk about 23 without the Goose. We won't talk about the sale because it wasn't with Christie's. But obviously it like made,
It sucked. It was it was a worse. No, I'm kidding.
There you go. It made obviously ripples around the market. It was on The Simpsons. By
the way, what's amazing about the Simpsons episode was we were watching football and it ended, and then we were having dinner. My wife's putting the girls to bed, and I'm like, did Homer Simpson just say the word NFTs? And because the game was on, and then Fox played The Simpsons, and I think I was the one that broke the news on Twitter. I'm like,
I saw it from your post.
I'm like, the Goose is on The Simpsons, You
That
know,
was
it was
crazy.
really wild. So, if I was to say something quickly about this, was our thesis at the fund is you're going to have a very short window of time to be able to collect these immortal objects that are they help us document how the ledger is just going to absorb all record keeping of value. Like we know, all of us here on stage, I would imagine everyone here in the room or people here trying to learn more. Let me tell you, everything will be on Ethereum if it's valuable. And so our thesis is, as you know, Jack said earlier with power laws, the fund's thesis is collect the power laws. Like, don't go crazy trying to get this like I do that personally. I collect emergent artists all the time.
You do, yeah.
But we raise outside capital. We have very wealthy, powerful investors who are the titans of tech. And our job was to provide them with exposure to this very thing that got them rich, power laws. And so the Goose is the power law generative artwork, whether you think it's cool or not. Like, it's not even up to you. The fact that everyone could recall what the Goose is if they've heard of art blocks, it means that, like, it is, and the fact that it's on The Simpsons, like, what a validation of our thesis, in our opinion. So that was, you know, going into this auction, you don't know where the hammer's going to hit. You don't know what I mean, we had our number in mind. But what was incredible was, like, I guess once we ended up winning, everyone's like, we didn't think it would be you. We didn't think you were going for it or something. I guess we looked like we were broke. We stopped buying for a while or something. Like, we played it, I guess, pretty close to our chest that we were, like, not even going to go after it. And then there was this, like, catharsis from a lot of people that were like, but thank God it's with you guys. Right? So
I'm
our
happy
job
it's
is
with you guys. Yeah.
Thanks.
You'll take good care of it for sure.
We'll patron that guy.
Yeah.
So that's the Goose.
Thank you. I put Snow Opepen on here just because it was an amazing collaboration. We talked a lot about Opepen, so I think we can go on the next thing. Jack, you just released Signature and Velocity with Red Bull and AOI. And we have a Christie sale upstairs. If you haven't checked it out, it's an auction up until Tuesday, an exhibition that NFT Now has wonderfully produced. But we have Jack's Signature number 0, which is a artist proof, or, you know, first of all, it's the first time we've ever auctioned anything token number 0 or like an artist proof in that way on Christie's 3.0. So tell us a little bit about the project, both of the projects, I guess, and also the importance of, like, number 0.
Yeah, so this was on Art Block's engine, so the last transition is perfect. The Snow Opepen, the OG generative art platform builder, and both of these collections are on Art Block's engine, which I actually used ChatGPT to write the code for both collections, because I'm not a creative coder. And the ideas in here are all kind of chapters that extend from the Checks and Opepen concepts, in that racing on the right-hand side is this thing that is enabled by your ability to own intangible ideas. Like Red Bull as an idea is this collection of people that makes this incredible machine that shows up in this place and competes at the highest level of engineering. And these, like, unlikely collaborations and the aesthetic of this thing, you know, when you see every single logo you can imagine pasted on every single piece of the car. And trademark on the left-hand side is really, signature is a idea of the mark of the trade in racing. So you sign the canvas in a different way as a race driver, and fortunately, this happened a couple of days before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which is the last in the season, which Red Bull had won the season earlier on, but Verstappen at the finish line performed the signature. So it captures a moment in time, and hopefully these ideas consistently reference my background is in advertising, so I work with a lot of brands in my lifetime, and the ability to work in this context with brands where you're trying to make the thing they're doing more interesting at scale without having to, like, say, buy this thing. is a much more interesting challenge, and the dynamic between you is so much more healthy too, because the way the collaboration is initiated, and it's not a hey, change this, do that. It's more of a like, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, amazing. The current bid is 9.69 ETH, so you have a few more days to bid. Yeah, so again, our auction is up until the 12th of December, ends at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And just to close this panel out, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, man.
This has been
Appreciate
amazing.
Thanks, everyone.
Just want to, we're closing out 2023. We are entering hopefully a bull market. Sentiment is good. Trades are up. What are you guys looking forward to in 2024? What excites you? Any final thoughts on the year ahead?
I personally, if you watch my own personal wallet right now, I'm buying a lot of AI art. Where if you bought AI art prior to this year, it was so technical. You needed, like, the artist built the AI. They did all these, and so if let's like reduce the human being. Let's say that they have two skill sets: creativity and technical. Like the AI artist of the past was like extremely technical, and you're lucky if they're also very creative, but like they might be down here. In the last 5 months, AI tools have been unleashed that I'm using commercially, but that these artists are using creatively, which has unleashed this creative vertical, right? These artists, these creatives are now able to use this technical in a way that's amazing. And it's documenting the advancement of the technology in a way that, of course, museums will have these. So I'm very big on AI. And I think, I think then we're going to hit a wall. Because as soon as it's easy for you to do it, then it's not really that cool and collectible. So in 2024, don't go thinking this is like buy every AI piece you see. No, I think right now, maybe a 5-6 month window.
Agreed.
But so that's where I'm paying attention. And people like Jack, where there's network, like that's what's interesting for us.
Jack, how about you?
So we got, I think, 183 sets left to go on Oppen stuff,
Oof.
which is intimidating but fun. And doing things with the new artists. We did something today where we collaborated on a pair. We call them Oviators, a physical pair of glasses. Yeah. And the idea that network can then drive value back to the people that have been contributing to it permissionlessly, artists, builders, people who design sunglasses in this case. Just more of that, just finding interesting things and using the networks that we've created to spread value around elsewhere and get attention on people that are doing cool stuff.
My friends, thank you so much.
Thank you.